eye and right arm. It makes some things really inconvenient. Going to the bathroom for one? I'm right-handed too.
I can help you, Ragnar!
BlazBlue is my favorite kind of series. The games are fun, for sure. It's one of my favorites in the sense that it had a modest start, turned into a franchise with a lot of material made for it, became a pillar of the fighting game community, then faded away in an anticlimactic way. In short, the BlazBlue series went from having all of this made for it, to only getting about 200 monthly players on Steam. So what happened to this series? Let's take a trip down memory lane while I go through the rise, fall, and death of Arc System Works series BlazBlue.
I'm the main character, and yet again, I get left in the dark.
The story of BlazBlue starts with its sister game, Guilty Gear, also developed by Arc System Works. There wasn't any fighting game like it at the time, with its heavy metal meets anime aesthetic, intricate character designs, gorgeous sprite work, and deep gameplay. It was a decent hit in Japan and led to many sequels, and while it had a player base outside the country, it was a bit too anime for mainstream audiences in the mid-2000s. Players who did take the plunge were rewarded with a game that was as deep as the ocean, and a game where you could really show off in. The last major fighting game in the X2 series was Axe & Core, released in 2006. In my opinion, it's one of the best and most refined fighting games out there. Sadly for Guilty Gear, it was an illegal scuffle. Arc System Works developed the series, but SEGA Sammy distributed the games in the X and X2 series. So to release a new game, Arc Systems would have to go through SEGA, which they did not want to do. This is also the reason why we're probably not going to get a re-release of the Fist of the North Star fighting game anytime soon, but that's a different topic. Arc Systems made a Guilty Gear spin-off with Overture. It's a direct sequel to X2, but it isn't a fighting game and it sold poorly. It only had so many returning characters because anyone introduced in X or X2 were owned by SEGA. Still, people at Arc System Works wanted to make a fighting game, and that will lead to Battle Fantasia. Take 2 shots if you bought this game, 3 if you entered a tournament for it. Oh yeah, and BlazBlue. BlazBlue was the brainchild of Toshimichi Mori. It's hard to find out when development started. I can imagine it started around 2006. You are looking at concept art for the title right now. The rumor is that BlazBlue was supposed to be an RPG before being shifted into a fighting game. Now I could not find any verified source for that, and if there is, please let me know in the comments. It makes sense with how plot and lore heavy BlazBlue is compared to other fighting games. Plus, Guilty Gear Overture was a massive flop, so that might have incentivized Arc Systems to make a fighting game instead. This is also pure theory craft on my end. I imagine the announcement of Street Fighter 4 was also a motivator to make a fighting game instead of an RPG. BlazBlue Calamity Trigger was formally announced at the 2008 AOU Arcade Expo. I managed to find some location test footage from way back in the day. Forgive the low quality, this was recorded in 2008. The first game in the series, BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, was released in 2008 in arcades and 2009 for consoles. Reception to BlazBlue Calamity Trigger was positive for a variety of reasons. For one, just look at it. Those sprites have aged like a fine wine. That's why Arcsys has used them in their games for well over a decade. The UI, menus, everything in the game exudes style. The voice acting in the English version was top-notch. Everyone brought their A-game. In particular, Christina Valenzuela as Noelle, Jamison Price as Iron Tiger, Patrick Seitz as Ragna the Blood Edge were all deliciously hammy.
Huh? You two done already?
I've had enough of just about everything.
Whatever do you mean, brother? We've only just begun.
Spike Spencer needs a shout out for actually reading Arakune's lines like that.
Nothing but atoms, rip. Nothing when put under murky.
Though he ended up screwing himself over because he was getting paid by the word. And of course, you got that hard-rocking soundtrack to tie everything together. I'll be playing it throughout this video unless I get a copyright claim. But of course, a good presentation does not make a full fighting game. Calamity Trigger's gameplay was pretty fun. Compared to other fighting games at the time, BlazBlue was much more mobile. In fact, that was one of the reasons why a lot of Smash players in Albuquerque at the time took to BlazBlue. It was so popular with Smash Bros. Players that there was even a Brawl mod called BlazBlue in the works, which made Brawl play like BlazBlue, because modding a game to play like another game was easier than buying a console. It was 2009, times was tough. It also had a lot of mechanics to keep track of, which could make for some intense matches. Not everyone was happy with BlazBlue's gameplay. If you were around the Dust Loop or Shoryuken forums back in the day, you would have seen a lot of hate on the game because it wasn't like Guilty Gear, or because it was seen as a simplification of that formula. Very ironic with how Strive turned out, but we'll get to that later. That was the cycle for every new game. Marvel 2 players hated Marvel 3 and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Melee players hated Brawl, Third Strike and Super Turbo players hated Street Fighter 4, you get the idea. Sometimes you have to piss off the gatekeepers to get new stuff. We wouldn't have gotten some of the best music of all time during the mid to late 2000s if artists bent the knee to the old guard. That said, some of those gatekeepers might have had a point about Calamity Trigger's balance. It was clear that Arcsys was throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And I've said this before, the first version of a fighting game is almost never the best. If anybody says that their favorite version of Street Fighter 3 is New Generation, don't say anything, run away, just flee. This is not going to be a crash course on how to play Calamity Trigger, because if you're grinding Calamity Trigger in 2025, you are either A, hosting a throwback tournament, B, hosting a 2009 party where everybody needs to dress like this, or C, you got carried by Arakune, peaked in high school, and are dreading the Reddit post about you. Just some things. Bursting carries a high risk, because it put you in a danger state that meant you took more damage. Throws were bugged and were hard to land against a competent opponent as a result, and the balance needed a lot of work. You could put characters into 3 categories: extremely OP, existence was pain, and viable but were sadly stuck in Calamity Trigger. New could control the stage with her swords. In fact, New was so easy to play that one BlazBlue tournament in Albuquerque was won by a Brawl player who was playing New while reading combos off a sheet of paper mid-tournament. I think that says more about Albuquerque's skill in fighting games at the time, but I'll leave that for you to decide. Rachel had plenty of stage control options between her pillars and her frog, George 13, and could use wind to fly away. Arakune had a gimmick where if you curse someone, you'd get hit with the bees. I frauded out people with Arakune back in 2009. A fact that I am not proud of, and I pray at the shrines for forgiveness. Playing Arakune forever taints your soul. And we can't forget about Carl, who was a step below the big 3, but was really overpowered with his clap loops, though he wasn't as common because of his steep learning curve. Then you had the bottom tiers of Tigger, who had crap offense, defense, mobility, and combos. If you lost to a Tigger user in Calamity Trigger, you might not be cut out for fighting games. Hukumen had a gimmicky meter and bad mobility, and poor Bang had terrible damage, limited ammunition, and an all-or-nothing install super that, while having a rockin' theme, meant that he couldn't block. Other characters could be fun to play, but couldn't compete with the big 4. The balance was so poor for Calamity Trigger that the community decided it was better to skip EVO 2010's main lineup in favor of Melty Blood. Okay, so what about those who were not into the competitive community? Believe it or not, there are video game players who like fighting games for the sake of fighting games. A big thing that BlazBlue had over other fighting games at the time, and even now, is an actual narrative. More accurately, a long and in-depth story mode that tells the story through a visual novel format. Think of titles like Clanad, Air, or...
Tsuka Hami? I think I killed that shit, I'm not gonna lie.
Wait a minute, we need some supplies before I get into the lore of BlazBlue. Perfect, we got some Strong Zero. Look, when you're talking about some anime nonsense, you need a strong drink, and it doesn't get much stronger than Strong Zero. And don't judge me, there's nothing wrong about drinking a Strong Zero on a Sunday morning. It's not like you guys don't drink alcohol on Sunday mornings. Long ago, a creature known as the Black Beast threatened humanity. 6 legendary heroes banded together to fell the beast. Humanity began to rebuild with the, Novus Orbis Librarium, or NOL, to govern the world. And I checked, Tetsuya Nomura did not work on BlazBlue. In the year 2199, one man known as Ragna, the Blood Edge, started wiping out several branches of NOL to free the world from their grip. Ragna heads to the city of Kagutsuchi, where every manner of bounty hunter, NOL operative, ninja booby lady, and furry find Ragna while he's on a quest to, quote, rest his heart. Well, that's simple enough. The first game is unique is that every character has their own story route. However, each character's campaign actually happens. Rachel, being an immortal vampire, knows that everybody is stuck in a loop, and after you clear each story mode, you then find the final route to clear the story. Ragna meets New in the Cauldron, a place that turned Arakune into a monster, which is the same as Gallup, New Mexico, but I digress. Near the Cauldron, New manages to defeat Ragna in battle. New tries to take Ragna into the cauldron, but Noelle saves Ragna's life, and in this action they break the loop that the main cast was stuck in. And in breaking that loop, So allowed one of the main bad guys, Hazama, to start realizing his evil plans for the world. I think. I played all these games to different extents, but never thought about the plot until now. To be fair, it wasn't that complicated, but then I thought of the other games and I checked out. And I thought Kingdom Hearts was complicated. If I had to sum up BlazBlue, everybody in the plot wants to find, fight, fondle, and or finish off Ragna. Not necessarily in that order. There's more than one Noelle and Tsubaki, Lychee can't get over her ex, and these two sons of gun are the main bad guys. And Rylus Clover is in the running for worst fictional dad ever, along with Sho Tucker, Jonas Venture Sr., Cronus, and Castor. And that's saying a lot. Yeah, the story is needlessly complex, but it embraces its cliches with both arms, and the art and operatic acting more than make up for any shortcomings of the story. Despite the issues of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, it earned a fanbase in and out of Japan and provided a solid foundation for future titles. The commercial success of Calamity Trigger, as well as Street Fighter IV, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Online, and Tekken 6, as well as announcements of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Mortal Kombat 9, and King of Fighters 13 showed that fighting games were back and better than ever. The sequel to Calamity Trigger, Continuum Shift, released in 2010. Continuum Shift is objectively a better game than Calamity Trigger. Arcsys toned up the gameplay and ironed out the balance issues for a fighting game that was much more enjoyable all around. I didn't care for Calamity Trigger all that much, but I did play Continuum Shift with my whack-ass Tiger. Not enough to do well in tournaments, but I was having fun. The netcode was really good for the time, which made it easy to get games in. This was the point where BlazBlue found its footing, and it became more of a mainstay at tournaments. It even had a nice showing at EVO 2011. That was my first EVO, and what an EVO to go to. I also remember the series just getting more popular in general. I remember talking to people in my Japanese classes at UNM about BlazBlue. They had no interest in entering tournaments, but they liked the games for the characters and the story. Having a cool art style and great writing can go a long way. Seriously, the writing and localization in the BlazBlue games does not get enough credit. I'll play some of my favorite lines without context.
Where the hell did that come from?
She wasn't bad for a little girl.
Oh, how your mouth offends me at every turn, Ragnar. I'd cut it off if it weren't for the fact that I'd merely be giving you a bigger mouth in the process.
I am actually inside another man right now.
I won't let anyone else touch you. You're all mine.
What?
What does a man look for in a woman?
What is the one thing that he can't ignore? Nice breasts.
Men who are nitpicky can't get dates.
I get plenty of dates. Also, shut up.
Please. Will you marry me?
Continuum Shift made BlazBlue an established franchise for Arc Systems, and they went really ham with the spin-offs. Of course, you had side games like the mobile titles and an arena fighter for the DSi. I wonder if anybody won money off that title. X-Blaze was a big one, being a visual novel that was a prequel to the main events of BlazBlue. Plus, some games got ported to handhelds, so if you really needed to play Continuum Shift while taking a Continuum shit, you were in luck. Leave a comment if you regret not buying more 3DS and DS games when those systems were still active, because, to quote Dr. Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the prices on some of those games have, gotten out of hand. And it goes without saying, if either of these games come to the Switch 2, you already know I'm gonna be popping some champagne bottles. If you were in Japan, you had plenty of manga, light novels, and drama CDs to enjoy. Each of them expanded the world of BlazBlue, and some characters from the spin-off material would even make transition into playable status. And we can't forget about the anime BlazBlue Alter Memory, released in 2013. Those poor fools had the impossible task of condensing these two games into a 13-episode anime. And it was bad. Like, really, really bad. One title is hard enough to sum up. Why do two in one season? It just made a mess of an anime with a lot of plot holes and bad animation. At the very least, most of the voice actors reprised their roles, so it's worth it for that. This video is being made before Guilty Gear's anime is out, and I'll just say that it has a very, very low bar to clear. The train kept rolling with 2013's release of BlazBlue Chrono Phantasm. Much like Continuum Shift, Chrono Phantasm kept improving the gameplay, adding more characters, and complicating the story even more. One tidbit about Chrono Phantasm is that it had one of the most broken characters in all of fighting games with Kokonoe. She had it all, good combos, lots of screen-filling moves, she could mess around with your mobility, and just being broken in general. There were serious debates about banning the character, which never happened as the balance team quickly nerfed her to manageable levels. Chrono Phantasm made an appearance at EVO 2014, which, despite the Kokonoe situation, was an amazing event. It led to what might be the best EVO Grand Final set of all time. You had the unstoppable force of Dogura's Azrael and the immovable object of Galileo's Lychee, and they clashed in one of the longest, most intense, and emotional Grand Finals ever. Seriously, even if you aren't a fan of BlazBlue, I still recommend watching the set to see two titans clash. I was in the crowd at the time, and I would be lying if I said that I didn't choke up at that Grand Finals. On the topic of EVO, when I did my research for this video, the series wasn't at EVO or Super Battle Opera all that much. If you don't know what Super Battle Opera is, I'll save that video for another day. I blame that on each game in the series essentially having 3 release dates: the arcade release, the Japanese console release, and the American release. This isn't counting the delayed PC or European releases, because Europe couldn't fathom anime at the time. That would explain why this was Calamity Trigger's European box art. I did enjoy Continuum Shift, but I didn't stick with it because I knew that a new version of the game would be out shortly, and I know I'm not the only one who felt that way. Plus, these upgrades weren't as simple as a DLC patch. You had to buy a whole different disc. And these games launched close to each other too, which is a good way to flood your market. Here's a challenge: next time you go on your retro game hunting adventures, try to find as many copies of BlazBlue as you can. Bonus points if it's for the Vita. Coupled with how wacky Arc System's balancing can be, something that Guilty Gear Strive players are learning the hard way, it made sticking with the BlazBlue series difficult. I can also imagine casual fans being confused with the elaborate names, and the fact that other than some UI changes, the games are graphically the same. It's hard to find raw sales numbers. I distinctly remember each release selling less than the previous one. Now that I think about it, BlazBlue's bloated release plan can be blamed on Guilty Gear X2. The X2 line had lots of games, each with their own release dates. But it wasn't an issue back then because the Guilty Gear series was only a modest hit at best in the States. The international community wasn't as connected as it is now, and there wasn't much supplementary material for the series back then. Conversely, BlazBlue was a good hit for Arcsys, and it was being made at a time when esports was taking serious form in the FGC. So it's no wonder Arcsys kept the bad habits while making the BlazBlue series. It worked for Guilty Gear, why change things up? To be fair, Arcsys was also developing the Persona 4 Arena series around this time, which also ate into BlazBlue's player base. But that series ran into its own issues. Where's Persona 5 Arena at? In the background, Arc Systems was still doing their best to get the Guilty Gear franchise back from SEGA. They eventually bought it back and started pre-production on a new title for the series in 2012. The trailer for a brand new entry was shown off in February 2013, and it blew everyone away. I can't show you the original trailer because of copyright, but when the camera panned to show that Soul and Kai were 3D models, that's when we knew Guilty Gear was back. Arcsys was devoted to both franchises and split into 2 teams, Team Red for Guilty Gear and Team Blue for BlazBlue. How creative. Arc Systems splitting their focus between multiple fighting games is something that they've gotten good at, but splitting your focus means something is going to get the short end of the stick. But we'll get to that when we get to that. The BlazBlue series still continued on with one more title. The conclusion to Ragna's story. Central Fiction is the best version of BlazBlue in my opinion. It has the most refined gameplay, has the most characters, including the long requested Jubei, and with the rollback netcode patch, it plays the best online. If you are familiar with the Z-Man cinematic universe, you might remember that I reviewed this title way back in 2016 when my series was in its early years. I thought that Central Fiction was pretty fun, but at that time I lost all motivation to compete because Street Fighter V and Smash 4 were both painful games for me. Unfortunately, the hard drive that I had that review on and many other early Z-Man Show episodes got corrupted, making it and so many other videos lost media. It would be an honor to have my own lost media wiki page that someone else writes. Writing it myself would be too masturbatory. It's hard to talk about Central Fiction without bringing up the fact that Arcsys opted against giving the game an English dub. We all know that one person who thinks all English dubs are bad, even though they speak no Japanese and are just staring at the bottom half of their screens. Even those kinds of people were upset at Arcsys' choice. The reason given was that it would have delayed the localized release by months, and potentially missing out on EVO 2017. That's fair enough, but there were no plans for the dub to be DLC, or as a bonus for the Switch port. Maybe it was a money issue? It wasn't an issue with the actors, as they reprised their roles for a future title. Patrick Seitz had this to say about the whole situation. Another issue that fans had was that the story became harder to follow. Newcomers Naoto, not that one, S and Mai Natsumi were introduced in media outside the main games. S came from X-Blaze, a game that did get an English release that you can enjoy, or at the very least watch a playthrough on YouTube. Naoto and Mai came from the Blood Edge Experience and Heart Remix manga respectively. Neither manga ever got an official translation. Central Fiction made those stories really important to the main campaign, and introduced side characters from those books without any introduction. If you hadn't known those existed, you would have been really lost. And someone on the writing team decided it was a good idea to name Naoto's partner Raquel, because having a Raquel and a Rachel isn't confusing. The English dub controversy and esoteric plot aside, Central Fiction was embraced warmly by the scene and had a solid tournament run, with 2 appearances at EVO and being in the inaugural Arcsys World Tour. It still sees tournament play well into 2025, but mostly as a side game. Even though Central Fiction was the conclusion to Ragna's story and more or less gave everybody a happy ending, Arc System still had gas in the tank for the franchise. The first game announced after Central Fiction was BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, a crossover between BlazBlue, Persona 4, Under Night In-Birth, and Ruby of all things. Basically, anime Smash Bros. Objectively, it's not a bad game. I liked it at the time, but I didn't feel the need to stick with it. It caught a lot of heat before release because Arcsys revealed that half of the characters would be DLC. It came across as extra greedy as most of the DLC characters were reused assets from other games. It didn't sell well at first, but eventually it found its footing. There was a good amount of characters added, including characters from Arcana Heart, Akatsuki, and Senran Kagura of all things. And of course, Yumi would be the chosen character. Poor Asuka. Much like the other games, it had a decent tournament life, and you'll see events for it here or there, but most people prefer Central Fiction over it. If your main game is BBTag, please tell me why. That said, the whole game is worth it just for Yosuke getting called out for liking little kids. To be honest, I don't have much else to say about BBTag other than it kind of exists. And yes, it does have an English dub. BBTag released in 2018. That was also the year that they released Dragon Ball FighterZ along with Bandai Namco. Needless to say, it sold very well being a Dragon Ball game with amazing graphics. Dragon Ball FighterZ was supported for many years with many ups and many downs.
Yo, look! Oh my god!
Also in 2018, Side Games teamed up with Arc Systems to make BlazBlue Fantasy Versus. Again, that game had many ups and downs, but it ended up being a critical and commercial success. At EVO 2019, Arcsys revealed Guilty Gear Strive. Despite changing a lot of the Guilty Gear formula, like making the game easier for newcomers and removing the metal UI, it was a critical and commercial success. Having working rollback netcode at a point when offline events weren't really happening also helped out a lot. Guilty Gear is truly metal. It started off making weird stuff, refined its sound, got a fanbase, then it sold out. I'm not going to name any bands who've gone through this, but I am definitely having some pictures flying across the screen now. The point I'm getting at is that Arc Systems was supporting or developing 4 fighting games at once, and it's clear that one of these titles wasn't selling as well as the others. Gacha games rake in a lot of cash, and Arc Systems wanted that sweet gacha and gooner money. BlazBlue Alternative Dark War was that attempt to get that bag. It was announced in 2017 for a 2018 release to commemorate the game's 10th anniversary. The original developer, Gen Inc., went belly up, so Arc Systems had to pick up the slack and make the title themselves. It was released in 2021 to a rousing thud and ceased services in 2022. It didn't last a year on the market. Not even a collaboration with BlazBlue could have saved the title. I will say that there are some cool character designs in Dark War that would have been fun to play in a mainline BlazBlue title. That said, some name changes are in order. Dude's name is Avenge. So, what's your name?
My parents were slaughtered in front of me. I will avenge them. I go by Avenge.
Right. I'm just gonna go over here. And her name is White Justice. Oh, no. I definitely know who she voted for in the elections. Soon after Dark War's failure, Toshimichi Mori left Arc Systems, putting the series' future in doubt. If I had a nickel for every time I talked about a failed gacha game that died in 2022 on this channel, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. On the upside, BlazBlue Dark War and Sakura Revolution last longer than Concord. I know I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but Concord needs to take as many strays as possible. Currently, the last game in the BlazBlue saga is BlazBlue Entropy Effect. It's a roguelike game that has nothing to do with the mainline series other than reusing some assets. I'm sure it's fine. It's been stuck on PC, so I don't think that Arcsys really cares for the game, which is weird because according to this, it sold really well. And that ends the BlazBlue saga for now, and what an anticlimactic end to the series. It's hard to say if Arc System Works has any plans for BlazBlue at time of making this video. Without its creator at the company, and with them being busy with bigger and more commercially successful products, it's not looking too good for the series. Central Fiction having rollback netcode patched in is a consolation prize for flooding the market, making the plot hard to follow, and bringing Arakune into existence. Maybe there are people within Arc Systems who want to continue the series but aren't able to. It would be cool to see Ragna and Soul clash swords in a new fighter. It would make more sense than Lucy of all people being in Guilty Gear Strive. We'll see what the future holds. Hopefully the Wheel of Fate is still turning. And with that, my retrospective on the BlazBlue series is finished, and I hope you enjoyed it. BlazBlue was never my main game, but I had a lot of friends who played it back in the day, and I enjoyed playing it here and there. So for me, this video was easy to make because I just remembered it. I lived through the whole BlazBlue experience. But really, I want this video to age like milk, because when I made my Virtual Fighter video a while back, that video ended up aging really poorly because Sega is bringing back Virtual Fighter in a big way. So maybe the same will happen with BlazBlue in the future, and if that happens, well, I'll be here to talk about it. Also, throughout this video, you might have noticed I use a lot of footage from a game center called Game Acho. Unfortunately, it is closing down, and Game Acho is taking down their YouTube channels. I tried to download as much match footage as I could for this video just for preservation's sake. When I studied abroad in Kyoto in 2014 and 2015, I went to Game Acho at least once a week to play some CBS2 and Street Fighter 4, and it's right by the downtown area, so I'd pick up some strong zeros and enjoy the town. So this one's to you, Game Acho. Next time I go out, I'll be playing some CBS2 and Street Fighter 4 in your honor, and I'll be having some fun at the game centers while doing so. And if you guys have game centers or arcades in your area, make sure you pay them a visit. You never know when they're going to shut down. So leave some comments. What was your favorite game in the BlazBlue series? Did you play it back in its heyday? Who was your favorite character? Anything else, let me know down there in the comments. And while you're down there commenting, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell as well for notifications on future videos. Feel free to follow me on the social networks like Instagram, Blue Sky, @ZMains, and with that, we'll see you in the next video. Later everybody, take care.